first glance, it looked like the most harmless thing imaginable. A TikTok trend, a familiar format, the same camera angles, the same hand movements everyone else was doing. But the moment the audio wasn't what people expected, K-pop Twitter detonated. When Illit's song started going viral, the trend quickly became another battlefield in the already toxic Illit versus NewJeans copying war. Then, Danielle's sister, Olivia Marsh, joined in. Same trend, same timing, but she swapped the audio for her own song. And just like that, what should have been a routine act of self-promotion was reframed as a calculated act of shade. Suddenly, fans were acting like she had committed a personal offense, as if not using Illit's audio was some kind of public insult rather than a strategic choice. The reaction said less about Olivia and more about the environment surrounding her. In the middle of lawsuits, plagiarism, accusations, and non-stop fandom warfare, every move gets overanalyzed. If she had used Illit's song, accusations of clout chasing would have flooded in. By not using it, she was labeled petty and dismissive. There was no winning. In a climate where Beliflab is suing over defamation and the word copycat carries legal consequences, even silence becomes suspicious. Fans on both sides projected their trauma onto a TikTok, desperate to score imaginary points in a war that never ends. Was it an intentional slight? Probably not. It was a musician choosing to promote her own work while avoiding a radioactive audio. But in today's K-pop ecosystem, intention barely matters. Everything feels personal, every choice is politicized, and insecurity bleeds into outrage. This is the backdrop that sets the tone for everything that follows, where minor gestures spark massive backlash and drama thrives on overinterpretation. And if this small moment already feels exhausting, trust me, this is just the beginning. If you want to understand how this spiral connects to bigger power plays, lawsuits, and the darker mechanics of the industry, make sure you're subscribed and keep watching because it only gets messier from here. Once NewJeans stepped back into the spotlight, the power dynamic shifted instantly and Min Hee-jin was forced to change her strategy. For months, her strongest leverage had been the idea that she was an essential condition for the group's existence. But the moment the group proved they could move forward, that narrative cracked. What followed was a sharp pivot into what can only be described as a courtroom PR hybrid era, where every statement is framed as moral righteousness while circling around a very real, very expensive contract fight. Publicly, the message is that this was never about money. Legally, it is very much about a shareholder agreement, a put option reportedly worth tens of billions of won, and whether that agreement was breached or still enforceable. In late November, Min delivered hours of emotional testimony in court, portraying herself as betrayed, undermined, and pushed to the edge by the company she once helped build. She spoke of intense mental strain and framed herself as a creative figure crushed by corporate power. On the other side, the company argues that the shareholder deal was properly terminated due to a breach of trust, meaning no buyback is owed. Two stories, both incompatible, now locked in a legal standoff that is dragging well into the future. What makes the situation even more complicated is how carefully Min distances herself from NewJeans while still benefiting from their shadow. She emphasizes that the conflict is separate from the members, that her actions were never self-serving. But the timing of her repositioning tells its own story. As soon as her symbolic authority weakened, the narrative shifted from "I am the mother" to "I am morally correct." In K-pop, image management is survival, and this chapter marks the moment where protection turns into plausible deniability, setting the stage for an even deeper unraveling. The most revealing cracks in the story appeared when Min Hee-jin's behind-the-scenes involvement became harder to deny. Reports surfaced that she had advanced knowledge of what the NewJeans members planned to say during their emergency livestream and even assisted with practical details like staff coordination. Yet at the same time, she insisted the broadcast was not about her but purely the members speaking for themselves. This contradiction sits at the center of her current strategy. She wants the emotional authority of being the unseen protector while rejecting any implication that she orchestrated events. It is a delicate rhetorical dance designed to preserve moral influence without legal liability. Whenever questions arise about whether the members are acting independently, the response follows the same pattern. The idea that they could be influenced is framed as insulting, as if suggestion alone undermines their agency. But the subtext is clear. She wants to be perceived as the reason things happened without being treated as the responsible party. In an industry where power is often informal and invisible, that distinction matters, especially in court. Then came the personal element that shifted the tone from corporate dispute to character scrutiny. During shareholder agreement hearings, a connection between Min and producer Kim Ki-hyun, also known as Bana, was openly discussed. Min acknowledged he was her ex-boyfriend while defending his role in NewJeans' music. The company countered by arguing she had promised him a portion of her potential buyback proceeds. She did not deny the claim outright, instead framing it as a personal matter. On its own, a past relationship proves nothing. But when romance intersects with business decisions, it becomes fuel for suspicion. This is how reputations erode, not through a single scandal, but through accumulating details that invite doubt. The dispute stops being just about contracts and becomes a public evaluation of motives, loyalty, and trust. And once that shift happens, every action is reinterpreted through a harsher lens. As the legal battle continued, Min Hee-jin began performing what many saw as her moving on era, a carefully staged attempt to show independence while the old conflict still raged in the background. Reports revealed that she had already registered a new agency complete with the full idol industry scope, artist management, music production, distribution, branding, and events. On paper, it looked like a clean reset. In interviews, however, the messaging felt conflicted. She described herself as financially devastated by the lawsuit, openly talking about being broke and humiliated by contractual restrictions, while still insisting the fight was never about money. The contradiction was impossible to ignore. When someone repeatedly emphasizes their bank balance, it becomes hard to believe finances are irrelevant. Her next strategic move was even more calculated. She announced plans to debut a boy group rather than a girl group, explicitly rejecting any narrative of creating a NewJeans replacement. From a public relations standpoint, it was smart. Launching another girl group would have ignited immediate backlash, accusations of betrayal, and claims that she was recycling the very image she said she was protecting. A boy group allows her to maintain her identity as a visionary creator while sidestepping the most explosive moral criticism. At the same time, the broader corporate ecosystem was escalating. B-Lift Lab filed a lawsuit targeting a fandom operator connected to plagiarism accusations, signaling that the company was done tolerating narratives that framed their artists as copycats. This move carried cultural weight. It wasn't just about damages, it was about drawing a legal line under fandom warfare. And once again, Min framed her past actions as protective, not strategic. The problem is that I did it for the girls' works as branding, not as a legal defense. Courts don't rule on intentions or vibes, they rule on conduct, contracts, and whether trust was broken. As both sides doubled down, the industry itself became collateral damage. By this point, the narrative had expanded far beyond one dispute and into a full-scale reflection of how K-pop power struggles actually work. Allegations began circulating that the company had interfered with awards campaigning, including rumors about Grammy submissions being discouraged or blocked. These claims spread rapidly, fueled by fandom accounts and viral summaries, but noticeably lacked solid documentation or confirmation from credible court records or major newsrooms. In an industry where perception often moves faster than proof, rumors gain traction simply because they fit an existing villain arc. Big companies are assumed to be petty. Creative executives are assumed to be victims. Accuracy becomes optional once a story feels emotionally satisfying. What Min Hee-jin has consistently pushed is moral legitimacy. Every action is framed as protection, every conflict as betrayal, every legal move as a reluctant response to injustice. The language is carefully chosen to distance her from accusations of greed, while she simultaneously fights a very money-shaped battle involving shareholder rights, contract enforcement, and future leverage. At the same time, she is building a new company, planning a new group, and ensuring that her identity is never reduced to being nothing without NewJeans. It is a survival strategy as much as it is a narrative one. On the other side, the company's response has been cold and procedural. Tighten contracts, push lawsuits forward, let subsidiaries go after defamation. If public sympathy can't be secured, legal precedent will have to do the work instead. This is where K-pop reveals its least glamorous truth. Behind the aesthetics, the music, and the fandom passion, the industry runs on paperwork, leverage, and endurance. The louder the cultural war becomes, the quieter and more decisive the legal machinery moves. In the end, there are no clean heroes here, only competing versions of control. Creative vision versus corporate authority, emotional loyalty versus contractual obligation. And as fans argue online, believing they are defending idols, the real battle plays out in courtrooms and boardrooms, where sentiment carries no weight. If you want to keep following how these power games reshape careers, fandoms, and the future of K-pop itself, make sure you subscribe, like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned for the next chapter because this story is far from over.